hilarious to me is going back to like the national defense part and the military industrial complex, the amount of money, like one big reason why that's not cut is because of the dividends and all the stocks that our senators and congressmen can get and can like use insider information to benefit themselves. I mean, I think recently Matt Gaetz, surprisingly, and AOC have teamed up to basically pass an uh like anti-trading bill, basically preventing congressmen from trading stock. And I think it makes like a lot of sense, like actually. And it literally, I think a congressman recently benefited, and I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, when First Republic Bank was going down, he put in short options for it and he made a ton of money. And then you know who bought First Republic Bank? Of course, Chase. And when Chase bought it, Chase's stock went up. And of course, he bought Chase stock. And so now, like, he's made literally probably over hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, all because of like they're allowed to use their insider information to trade. And I think it's really unfair, and it pisses me off, as many things do.
Yeah, I remember that story actually, and I actually remember it was a woman, it was Lois Frankel from Florida, Democrat.
Wow, a Democrat, nonetheless. You know, that's
it's like George Carlin said, and I'm going to end up saying this a lot across the entire history of this podcast, but you know, there's a big old club, and we ain't invited.
Yep.
You know,
and we aren't going to be invited. You know, it's like there's no way they are ever gonna like let like they're not gonna ever let us in. And what's insane to me is a similar type of bill was trying to get passed back in January of this year, and it was dubbed the Pelosi Act, which I think is hilarious because Pelosi is a known insider trader, and it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, this is the same bill by that was proposed by Josh Hawley, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Josh Hawley, the guy, I guess, you know, even the broken insurrectionist is right twice a day. But yeah, like, I mean, like, you know, I will say, and I'll give like Matt Gaetz credit on this. Josh Hawley, we'll come to that one later date. I don't know how I feel about him, but you know, Matt Gaetz, like, he's been incredibly consistent on this kind of issue. And yes, like, we shouldn't, if you're in Congress, you shouldn't be allowed to trade stocks. You shouldn't be able to be in position to influence the U.S. economy and benefit from those decisions. And like a lot, like what's good for the stock market isn't necessarily what's good for labor. And we're seeing this, like we've seen this throughout the entire history of this country, because in the day this country was founded by a bunch of slave owning landowners who didn't think anyone except for themselves should be able to vote. But like we've seen a long history in this country of where, like, when it comes to what's good for labor or what's good for the capitalist class, the country always sides with the capitalist class, and that's just not how things should be. Like, the government should be working for its workers. So when you're a member of the government or you're an elected official and you're sitting here, you're trading stocks, you're gonna be compromised. You're just by default, because what's good for your portfolio is not necessarily what's good for labor. And we see that with the Fed, with how the Fed's been basically using interest rates to punish labor. Because, hey, we can't let those poor people make too much money. How else am I going to be able to afford my next penis rocket so I can go to quote unquote space?
I mean, and I personally would not go as far as to attack capitalism, because I don't think we live in a capitalist state. I think capitalism is dead in this country. It is very much not, with corporatism, it's literally anything but capitalism, because capitalism was founded on the idea of whoever can make the best product for the cheapest prices will be able to like succeed. But like, it's more that like there's a select few that get to win. So select corporations and select elite groups get to be on the top. And yeah, it's one of the many tragic things about where we're at in politics, and the fact that like the country, the United States of America as a country, needs to worry about its debt ceiling, and the fact that we, like, not we, but we as in the congressmen and senators, are able to kind of use the budget that they make to benefit their family. And it's not just like hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's probably millions, especially those congressmen and senators that have been in power for so long, like Ted Cruz and some other individuals. It kind of like they get to benefit while normal people are continuously struggling, and they get to piggyback off our hard work. And what really is funny to me is that like they don't like it when the economy goes into a recession, but the economy goes into a recession because normal people can't afford things that these companies are producing. Like this whole economy, this whole country is built off the backs of consumers, and like there's like very little regard for the consumers and the people themselves behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I don't know, like we could talk about this like all day, but I mean, the worst thing about like the debt ceiling fight in the day is that like, not saying the debt doesn't matter, but the debt doesn't matter, you know, like as long as like we can keep paying off our interest rates, which you know we can do, so long as like the country has enough revenue to cover those interest rates, then like in the short term the debt doesn't matter. And it's not like we've reduced the debt across like all these debt ceiling fights that we have every single year. You know, like have we reduced the debt? No. Then it doesn't seem like it's that earth shattering of a problem, does it? You know,
like it would be one thing is if we were actually working towards reducing our debt. If that graph was going down and not completely up the whole time, then it would be a different conversation of, yeah, we are actually prioritizing that. No, we're prioritizing congressmen and millionaires and all the people at the top continuously making money while normal people still struggle. And this debt that continues to rise, it's taking from the normal people. It's not taking from the rich people. They're making their money somehow. They have all of the stuff that they have, and it's taking away from us normal people. And it's like it's a tale as old as time, really. That's what it is. And we ain't invited to the party, so you know.
Yeah. And like here's the thing about like the debt is like if we want to have a conversation about the deficit, we can have a conversation about the deficit, but like you can't cut taxes and expect to cut into the deficit. Like part of the reason why the deficit is so big is because we just keep cutting taxes over the last 20 years.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, how are they like, they're cutting taxes for those people, but raising taxes on the middle class, raising taxes on like the lower middle class, etc. And just even like the upper middle class. Like, I think I read an article like maybe a week or two ago where it was like literally you need to be making $300,000 at your job to be taking home $100,000 in New York City. $300,000 is a lot of fucking money. Like that's a lot, and all they're taking home is a third of that. And like that's like, I think that's ridiculous because like, one, where is the money going? And then two, why are they having to pay for it when there's people that have literally billions of dollars that could afford to take a hit?
Absolutely, yeah. And like, you know, what really becomes really funny too is that like if you actually care about like reducing the deficit, the answer is to vote Democrat. Like if you look at the history of this country, Democrats always reduce the deficit, Republicans always raise the deficit. And then when they raise the deficit, they say, hey, look, we can't afford this anymore. We need to cut taxes for people like me.
Yeah.